Good news, there's cows for sale today. I don't know how much they're going to cost. I suspect they're not going to be cheap, and we are looking for cows. 15 or so would be good. So we'll get Hamish fed. Here comes Dad with a trailer, because there's 2 cattle over there going into the trailer. They're for our own butchery. Kev's going to take them later on today. Dad and I are heading north to Aberdeenshire, to Thainston Market, to buy some coos. Exciting. Cattle beast loaded. We'll take that trailer along the road to yard 1, where Kev will take those cattle in later. And we'll wait to pinch my brother's car. We're going to use that to go up north. Right, let's rock and roll. Go and pick up Dad and head north. You're currently on the steering wheel. We might also be nipping across to Nairn. It's not just quite nipping across, it's, I don't know, another hour and a half, 2 hours west of Thainston to see a hen shed, potentially. 2 hour drive up to Thainston. We're away in good time actually. It's 2 minutes to 7, so we'll be there at 9. Sale doesn't start till 10 o'clock, and quite often you're 5-10 minutes delayed anyway, so plenty of time to get a look round. Heifers with calves at foot for sale, bulling heifers for sale, cows with calves at foot for sale. This could end up being a very expensive day. On average, generally speaking, most animals right now, most cattle are up somewhere between 600 and 800 pounds a head on this time last year. So I'll need to look up the invoice from the cattle we bought at this sale last year. Here it is. We'll zoom in on some numbers. So I suspect we're going to be a few £100 more expensive than that figure. Dad's just found last year's catalogue. 33, 33, 34, 35. Right, there is quite a few for sale today. Similar numbers to the last time we were here. We'll see how we get on. The sign's up round the ring saying no filming unless you've got permission. So I'm not going to wind anyone up. We'll just cut to how we got on. Hopefully well. Wish us luck. These are all from dispersal. They're needing a bit of condition, but they're not bad. So I don't know what age they are, we won't know till we get in the ring. We'll see what age they're like. And then you have a fair amount of heifers with calves at foot. Most of these are. A lot of Simmentals up this way, this is why we come up here. It's quite a nice pen, I'm just keeping an eye on feet. There's quite a few pens with dodgy feet, they look fine. Nice calves on them. A bit smaller the cows, but I don't mind that. I don't want a big muckle cow. Good udder, good feet. Reasonable temperament, and obviously the age, heifers with calves at foot, they're young. If they've got a calf at foot, you know they've calved it, they're able to calve, happy days. We'll see how we get on, whether we get some heifers with calves at foot and some from the dispersal maybe. Another bull? Don't think so. He's quite a nice looking bull, isn't he? He's not our breed, but he's a nice looking lump. Job done, 16 heifers with calves at foot. Pen number 1. 253, pen number 2. Pen number 3. This beast here, 287. Heifer. That's a nice one. And calf, limousine calf. Pen number 7 or 8, or 6 or 5. 331, which will be this pen. This pen, both heifers. We're just checking some of the bull calves we've got that they're castrated, some might not be. Yeah, it's been castrated. 339, 342, 346. 346, there should be 2 cows there, 2 heifers. Both bulls. That one's not castrated, so the other one won't be, I doubt it. Yeah, both to castrate these two. 1521, and what was the first one? 1301. 1301. Both calves to castrate. These two pure semis with quite a large calf there. Same there. Both in calf. I think that one made 8,000 and that one made 7 and a bit. Or 6 and a bit, I can't remember. Or 5 and a bit. No idea, but that one was 8. Some lass, you're worth £8,000. Well, you're probably worth a few hundred as well. We didn't buy those ones. 242. Does this pen? It's a nice set. They're both heifers. Fine. And then last but not least, this pen, 339. Job done. Most of our beasts are somewhere in there. 16 of them with 16 calves. Happy days. We came for 15. We've got our numbers. Job done. Right, we've got the boss on camera, the man with the wallet. Slightly less heavy. Happy with the cattle?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Yeah, you definitely get a better choice, more what we're looking for up there than anywhere else we've been. So they're not cheap, but nowhere will be. So as long as you're happy with the cattle, then that helps writing the check.
Slightly larger check than normal, but yeah, there's a lot more Simmentals up this way than there is down with us. There's a lot of limousines, and we're not limousine minded, so Simmentals it was today. People want to know the history of the farm. You can give us this. Do your young farmer spiel when you give them the when Grandpa moved in through to now.
My grandfather went to Goulburn in 1924 as a young tenant farmer. He was aged 23 or 24, not married, and was lucky to get the tenancy, as tenancies where there was more movement in farms, and farms were a lot smaller in these days, and he moved up from Fife on his own. He wasn't married at that point. I think he got married a year or two after he took over at Goulburn, and at that time it would be predominantly stock with crops grown to feed the cattle. In the mid-30s he took over 2 small places that were above Goulburn, that were very, very small holdings. He took them over and ended up paying less rent for the new hole than what he had been for Goulburn before that. Showed a couple of things. One that farming was not in a good way and nobody wanted to take these tenancies on, and also that the land was not in a good state of repair. There wasn't any roundup in these days, so I think basically both these small holdings were covered in couch grass, as they call it, and the only way to get it out was to manually hoe it out. So it took a lot of time and effort to get the ground back in working order. And then I suppose the war came along, and then that was more incentive for people to grow crops. So the government were obviously needing food to be grown in their own country to support our own selves. And that's when subsidies came in as well, more subsidies, more incentive to grow, and farming went through a better period. In that period he had got into breeding Aberdeen Angus cattle, and that's what Dad and him did. And Dad was born, he was born in 1931, he left school when he was 15, so that would be 1946. Aberdeen Angus were the main thing on the farm at that time. There was a lot of demand from Argentina, these sort of countries, and they wanted small cattle and were willing to pay a lot of money for them. And Aberdeen Angus breeding was very good at that time. You look at the old photographs and you think, oh, they were quite big bulls, and then you see one with whoever was on the end of the halter. If you get a picture of a person with them, then they are actually much taller than what the animal is. And then there was some outbreak. Exports were banned, and basically the trade for these cattle stopped overnight. Lots of people were left with very small Angus with very little demand, and that led to the introduction of Charlie and Limousin and Simmental breeds coming into the UK from the continent. And the Aberdeen Angus went through a tough phase at that time till they regained some height and some depth to them. So mid-70s, Dad decided to sell the Aberdeen Angus, as we were struggling at that time, probably struggling for labour,
still struggling for
which
labour.
is probably an ongoing occurrence ever since. And from then on, bought a lot of store cattle and developed the arable side a bit more. Before that, we always grew oats for seed, didn't really grow much barley, but after that period we started growing barley again for seed, and then gradually ended up growing more winter crops as well. I suppose I came home in 1982. I was still buying a lot of store cattle, a lot from up in Aberdeenshire, went to markets, Huntly, Aboyne, which we met the old auctioneer from Aboyne today that probably haven't seen for 30 years. Thurso, and these sort of places buy store cattle, fatten them, mostly at grass, but sometimes inside during the winter as well. And that was that. Then so mid-90s we bought a farm 6 miles along the road, which was mainly arable. Buying anything is the easy bit, paying it back is the hard bit. And after a few years, I suppose late 90s, barley prices weren't very exciting, and then that's when we started thinking about doing other things. We'd always done other bits and pieces on the farm, the hens and whatnot, and started free-range eggs, which Fergus started with 6 when he was at primary school, and then started selling some eggs to his teacher. And then that was when free-range hens were just beginning to start. We had a small amount of hens in batteries before that point, as we'd always had hens going way back, even to grandfather's days. During the war, eggs were bartered for other things. When you couldn't get things, they were quite a useful bartering mechanism. So that's free-range eggs started that point, so that would be late 90s, mid-90s. Then we started going to Perth Farmers Market. The Perth Farmers Market was the first farmers market in the UK, was and still is quite successful, and that started the point when people started to get more interested in their food, more interested where it was coming from. So that was early 2000s, and then we started after probably harvest 2001, which I think barley prices were in the 90s, and it was a bit tricky harvest, and then we thought of other ways of making things work.
Making money.
Making money, basically. Talked about farm shop, didn't, like all these things, hadn't got very far. And then we started to look at it seriously. But this time, well, we always were selling eggs from our garden shed, and that was beside the lawnmower, an honesty box, and it was just really just like a garden shed. Took the lawnmower out, took everything out of the shed, and painted it and tidied it up a bit, and started selling some other things there: jams, marmalades, gingerbreads, fruit loaves, all that sort of thing. And that, along with the farmers' markets, provided a very steep learning curve as to what people wanted to buy and were interested in buying, and would travel to come and actually purchase these goods. So that gave us an insight into what we thought would be people were looking for. Initially, we were going to convert our garage, which was right next to the house, and convert that into a farm shop. Started that process, got plans drawn up, went for planning permission, and within that period we decided that a coffee shop was probably an essential additive to the shop, and that would level out the trade rather than having peaks and troughs when it may just be the shop. FBDS grants at that time was a farm business development grants on the go, and we applied for one. Initially we thought we would put on another egg shed, but they were deemed too agricultural, not diversified enough, so they weren't eligible. So we thought, well, we may as well try and use this money for something. What we're going to use it for. So we decided we'd build a farm shop and coffee shop.
How much did the grant cover?
25,000 was the maximum grant you could get, and that was up to 50% of your project.
Right.
So then we started looking for what kind of building did we want. We didn't really want a big agricultural shed, we wanted something more rustic, more rural. Hen sheds we were building at that time were small ones, and they came from Harlow in Leicestershire. Just chatting to him one day, we said what we were planning to do, and he said, well, we do fancy stables and cricket pavilions and things like that, and we've built some stables for the Queen, so he said, we might be able to do something. So that's what we ended up doing. Fairly low cost build, but it gave us what we wanted. And he said, as long as you spend decent money on windows and doors and whatever, then the rest of it just has to be functional. And that's what we found, because we did actually one day we went to Ireland for a weekend, and we sat outside at this coffee shop place, and it was, if you looked at the building, it was a bit like ours now, I suppose, a bit here and a bit there, a flat roof here, air conditioning units here, there and everywhere. But inside they had finished it off well, and it was very busy and doing well. So that made our mind up that we would go for a Harlow's shed. The good thing was it came in kit form. Ourselves and the local joiner, we managed to erect it fairly quickly. Other bits took a bit more time, and eventually we opened in June 2003 with no big fanfare. We just managed to get the water switched on one Friday night after pestering Scottish Water for a couple of months, and we opened on the Saturday because we moved everything out of the garden shed over on the Friday, so there was nothing left in the garden shed. That was the first day. We had the trickle of customers coming that would have been coming to the garden shed, so they were diverted to go to the shop. And they had been asking us for months when the shop was going to open because we didn't really have a definite date. It just depended when we got everything done. So in the end they were quite surprised that we were actually open that Saturday. I think we probably did 12 coffees that day, maybe more, maybe less, not many more. I don't think we charged for any because we only had we only had the water on the Friday night, and the coffee machine, nobody knew how to work it on the Saturday anyway, so I don't think the quality of the coffee was up to much the first day. But that wasn't the object. The object was to get people in, see what we were doing, and hopefully they would come back. We'll have a breather now.
How long's that? Right, we'll stop there. That's 21 minutes. We'll do the second half
We've got to
another day.
We've got to break it.
Yeah, we've got to break it. Second half in another video, coming in the future sometime.